Who cares? Just because you firmly believe that something you are about to say is important, and just because you can demonstrate factually why it should matter to the audience you are trying to reach, does not guarantee that anyone else will even pay attention, much less believe or remember your message. Be realistic with yourself and your colleagues about who is likely to care about what you say and why. Above all, understand that your job as a communicator is to make what you believe important and somehow interesting to others. And just because you can prove that something is important doesn't automatically mean that anyone else will pay attention or care. The way the news media routinely cover politics is a perfect example. Nobody stays up late on election night anxiously waiting to learn which vision of Social Security or Medicare policy will prevail. People stay up in order to find out who won. The news media know perfectly well that issues are important in politics, but because the audience is more interested in winners and losers, they focus most of their attention on the horse race. Most of us see the world in stories, and we want those stories to be new and interesting. If a story isn't interesting or doesn't relate to our emotional concerns, we probably won't pay attention for very long, no matter how hard someone else may try to convince us of its enormous importance to our lives. Successful communicators have mastered the art of making what is important to them also interesting and important to the people they need to reach. But it doesn't happen by accident. Effective communication is about telling your story, making your point, and scoring points with your message. It is not about defending yourself against someone else's allegations. Effective communication is all about having a point to make, understanding why it is important, then knowing how to make it interesting and memorable, regardless of the circumstances. Defining the debate. Effective communication is also about something called issues management. The primary objective of issues management is to define the terms of a debate before someone else has a chance to do it first. Issues management is all about telling your story before someone else tells it for you. This is much more than an exercise in timing or semantics. If you are able to define the terms and establish the theme that shapes the story, you can control the discussion. And if you can control the discussion, you are more likely to win the debate eventually, no matter how powerful your opponent's arguments may seem at first. Problems and solutions. An interesting example of how this process works involves two well-known companies, once units of the same huge international conglomerate. Food processing giant Kraft and the old-line tobacco company Philip Morris have both faced serious strategic communications and issues management challenges over the years. But they have tackled them in very different ways and with very different results. Philip Morris and other big tobacco companies spent many years and countless millions of dollars defending themselves against charges that their primary product, cigarettes, can kill the people who smoke them. The debate went on for decades, but unfortunately for the tobacco companies, the fundamental issue involved was shaped by their opponents at the very beginning of the controversy. Anti-smoking activists succeeded in framing the debate around public health and product safety. As a result, the eventual outcome was settled almost as soon as the discussion began. It was no longer a question of whether big tobacco would lose, but only when and, of course, how much it would eventually cost them. Now let's take a look at how Kraft has dealt with an issue that is only just starting to attract public attention, but which has the potential to be just as devastating to the food business as anti-smoking activism was to big tobacco. Obesity is of increasing concern to food companies everywhere. Activist groups and the plaintiffs' bar are busy raising public awareness of the problem and pointing the finger of blame at big food companies, accusing them of ignoring public health concerns in an effort to get us all hooked on unhealthy junk food. Kraft could have wasted a lot of time and money arguing that none of the food products it sells, by themselves, could possibly make anyone fat or unhealthy. They could have tried to convince the public that obesity is simply caused by eating too much. But as the debate got underway in earnest, Kraft took a very different approach. Instead of arrogantly dismissing public health concerns the way the tobacco companies did for so many years,